I want to share something I ran across that the Master, Sri Ramakrishna, had to say about spiritual life that I found rather interesting and potentially very helpful in putting together a practice. He says, "It is good to remain on the plane of the Lila after reaching the Nitya. If we first understand the Nitya, then we will be able to understand the Lila too. If one does not know the unchanging, immutable reality that forms the basis of this changing universe, one cannot understand the Lila." All right, now if you remember a while back, we did a little bit of a talk about the fact that because we live in a relative world, it implies that there is an absolute unchanging from which all of the change can be measured. Otherwise, change is meaningless. If you have no fixed standard from which to measure something, you cannot tell if it's far or near, big or small, green or orange. You can't tell all of these differentiations. You can't make any of these differentiations if you don't have a solid standard. And so as a universe of constant change, in order for that relativity to exist, it has to have an absolute, unchanging, immutable background upon which all of it is measured from. And so that is the idea of this absolute, unchanging nature of the divine, of God, the Purusha. And that's called the Nitya. You arrive there by removing all of your attributes. You know, we talk a lot about the name of God being I am, and that image of the beloved that's placed within us, that creates us, is God breathing himself into us, giving us his image. And that image is our existence, our love, our intelligence. That I am is who we are. And that is the unchanging, immutable absolute. That is our nature, and we reach that by removing all of our adjectives that we have added to ourselves as life has gone on. That I'm a man, that I'm this old, that I like this and I don't like this, and I want that and I don't want that. And all of these different attributes that we've defined ourselves by, many of which were not true at all the points in our life. And so we really should understand that they can't be us now if they weren't us then. That changing attributes are not a description of what and who we are. And so the Master is saying you're not going to be able to understand the nature of this changing universe until you understand that it exists upon an unchanging, immutable absolute behind it. And that means the same for you and for me. That this Sat Chit Ananda is behind us in its perfect form, which is why there's no change. It's perfectly balanced. It has every need met. There is no need for instability. It is perfect and whole and satisfied as it is. And by knowing that, coming to know that about the true self, then you can measure and see clearly and correctly the nature of this changing universe. And he goes on here to say this. He says, that is why the Master says, one should first reach the Nitya. Again, we realize the Nitya only through the Lila. We realize the unchanging absolute only through the changing, because that's really what we're exposed to through our senses and our body and mind. He says this is because until we realize the immutable reality, we cannot recognize the changing universe for what it is. What does change mean? When a train moves forward, it travels through many places, leaving them behind. Now, this going forward and backward is only with reference to something static, in relations to which the terms forward and backward are used. So he's talking about what we just described, that you need that unchanging, immutable absolute in order to measure all of the change of the universe. If everything in the universe is changing constantly, then there is no meaning to measuring it. Because it doesn't make any sense to do that, you know? It might take some thinking to come to that conclusion. But if you think about it, if you have no standard, nothing standing still from which to measure, your measurement is meaningless, you know? Similarly, unless one admits a changeless state, change has no meaning. Something is said to be changing only with reference to something static. For example, we may take a station at which the train is standing as the reference point. It is only with reference to this point that we can say we are moving forward. Otherwise, moving forward has no meaning. So know that you are that unchanging absolute, and that is why you are able to see and witness all of the change of the universe, because you yourself are not changing. And I had this conversation one time with Swami Prabhupada at the lunch table where I talked to him about, well, what about growth? Am I not changing? He says, no, you are not changing. He says your mind is changing because of its close proximity to you, to your real nature, which is that unchanging absolute, which is already realized, already complete, already whole, already supremely satisfied. So touch that, become familiar with that possibility and that aspect in yourself. And through that, this crazy changing world will not be able to pull you every which way with it.